Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, part of the Paramount Podcast Network. I am Mike Casazza alongside Chris Anderson here to talk about West Virginia football and kind of take an askew view of the roster for the 2022 season. Talk about who and what the Mountaineers don't have and might be able to use. But in doing so, Chris, and just brainstorming this idea, which I'll explain in a second, it kind of has shed some light on the roster on offense and defense. To my chagrin, we'll exclude special teams since you are now the content expert on that matter. But what we'll do is we'll look at the roster today on offense, another episode on defense, and say, you know what? It would be great if this team had that player from season X, and we're going to limit to the Big 12 with some exclusions here that we'll explain. And that would make everything perfect on offense or defense. What's kind of fun about this is that there are some obvious picks, but you say, well, wait a minute, they might not really need that. And you kind of figure out they have some strengths. And then conversely, you kind of look at things and you'd be like, all right, well, this is a weakness. But then you go back and you're trying to figure out who would work in the scheme they play, because they're still going to play the way they play. So who from the past would work with how they want to play on offense. So to me, it's an interesting way. There's always plenty of manners in which you can preview a season. I think we found a good one here by blending past and present. Do you want to lay out the ground rules, though, for the listeners as we try to get into the offense today?
Well, we're trying to limit it to, what do you want to say, only during Big 12, so past 10 years or so, because I think you open it up and you're opening a whole can of worms. So let's try to keep it relatively recent. Again, you want to pick one player that you think will most improve that side of the ball. You start talking, oh my God, Yanni Kajust was just an elite left tackle. Yeah, but you already have Wyatt Milam, so do you need to go that way? Tyler Orlowski, oh my goodness, just an amazing, All-American type center. You got Zach Frazier. So again, you got to think about what, as you noted, what West Virginia does and does not have when considering who you need to add to this team. And again, just one player, and not only what kind of maybe stats that person will or will not put up, but how he might help other people around him get better as well.
Can I just ask you one question here?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll cut this. I don't know. Because it might get into the answer to the question that we're going to have here. But who's the best right tackle from the past several years?
Oh, see, you're already stepping on my toes here, Mike.
Which, again, leads me to this, and we'll get into the question then. So you might say, all right, I'm looking at the roster, and as I tried to explain the other day in a preview podcast, like, I think that the personnel at quarterback, obviously, depth maybe running back wise, and then right tackle, they're all kind of on a string, and you're just thinking, all right, well, you're not going to get a better quarterback out there right now. We'll exclude Geno Smith from the conversation, obviously. Running back, kind of like what they have, so why would I get Wendell Smallwood? And then right tackle, well, has there been one that's so good out there that you would say, I have no need for Brandon Yates, who's played a lot of football, and Jaquay Hubbard, who projects as maybe a good player. So it's not as easy as just saying, here's the softest spot, let's get the best player from the past, because maybe the best player from the past isn't a substantial upgrade and you can have a better allocation of resources there. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to identify where this team could use some help and where they might find it too. So let's just begin, I guess, from pecking order, Chris, totem pole, if you will. What positions, what spots, what players do you think would be looking over their shoulder if this portal, if you will, was open and someone from the past could come and join the present? Again, no Tavon, no Geno. They're obvious ones here. I don't think you might actually take Geno. Everybody would take Tavon, but my point being Daniels is probably a pretty good player, and you won't replace him with Geno Smith, even though Geno might be better. But my point being that there's other areas you would look at here too. I don't know who's a little bit concerned about their spot.
So you touched on right tackle. I think that's something you have to consider. Again, you look at left tackle, you're feeling good. Committer at left guard, you're feeling fine. Center, feeling fine. Right guard, probably good there too with Nestor. So you get to right tackle and you wonder. Running back, some talent there, but again, is the offense going to get that much better if you go from Tony Mathis to Wendell Smallwood. And Smallwood, I think, you asking me last 10 years, who's the running back you think of when you think of, offensive production for West Virginia? It's Smallwood. And I'm not, and as good as he was, I don't know if adding him to this team is going to drastically change what this offense can produce. Then you start looking at wide receiver. And that's somewhere I would consider. Tight end, I'm fine with what's at tight end right now. Wide receiver, I would consider. We'll get into it a little more. And I know you said quarterback, but let me put you in the spot that I was just in a moment ago, because I think we both agree that Daniels has the potential to be great. He has shown, when healthy, that he is a very good quarterback. But if you could, would you add Will Grier and remove all doubt at the quarterback position?
I love it. So see, you ran the end around on my Geno question.
Yeah. So again, you don't take Geno, maybe Will Grier, and you just remove all doubt at quarterback. There's no, now you're not having any risk again, because in this make believe scenario we're talking about here, you're just getting 2018 Will Grier. Period. That's it. You're getting it. Not the potential. You're getting Will Grier, and I think that position is so important. I'd have to consider it, and that was one of my kind of 2, maybe 3 that I considered. There were 3 guys that I considered, and that was a big one right there, because I think if you're playing it safe and you just want to eliminate all doubt at the quarterback position, you just take Will Grier and roll with everything else you got.
Okay. I thought about one that I think might be your pick, so I'm not going to do it. Honestly, I hadn't spent that much energy on the quarterback one, just because I think I regret it now, because the point you made is absolutely in my wheelhouse. It's counterintuitive. It makes you think, and it's not something you would expect. So that's a good point there. I would probably spend more time on that now thinking about it than I did leading up to this too.
Well, can I interrupt and ask you a question?
Sure.
Let me ask you. Here you go. All right. So we just got done. It's this team, but you just got done with 2017 Will Grier, right? I got my years right? That's his first year at West Virginia. I'm not screwing this up, right? Okay. And so it's the offseason between his first and second year at West Virginia, and he's coming back, and he's the starting quarterback for this team right now. Is West Virginia talked about as a Big 12 title contender?
Oh, absolutely right.
Yeah. I think that's kind of my point here. Like, Daniels has that potential. It's there. You've seen it in tiny glimpses. But, man, if you just had no doubt, sure thing, Will Grier, and you don't have to think about it,
that would make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah, boy, that's a good point, Chris. That's not bad.
All right, well, let's wrap up this podcast, and we'll move on to the next one then.
Well, we should do this quickly here. Let's go to our picks, because, I'm anticipating, I think, where you're going with yours, and I want to get to it because I think I already made the point a little bit. I didn't get quarterback. I thought long and hard about tight end, because obviously, and I don't know why, but I was one of the biggest Trayvon Wesco fans that you probably could have had, like, to the point that I was like, I don't know why they're not using this guy. He's one of their best players on offense. Find a way to use it. And then, like, toward the end of that season where he was like a special player, they were building the offense around him. And I think that and they were running plays behind him. They were throwing in the ball, never mind the passes and the targets, but like they were running the ball his way. They were putting stuff in because he was a sixth offensive lineman who's extremely athletic, and you can move him around like a chess piece. And I just don't know they had that with Brian Palendi or Michael Locke or anybody else. They could use the tight end. And I just think that the Harrell offenses I've seen, like, that guy would be pretty dynamic in that Y position, whatever they're calling it. Like, I just think he'd be a dynamic player that you could have run blocking and doing things in the receiving game where he would be a factor. I'm not sure he would catch 25 passes and 8 touchdowns, but I think he'd be an option there too. I just can't get past the fact that, like, they still don't have a game breaker wide receiver. And just looking at the pattern of players that they've had at receiver in this offense, whatever, when that air raid version has been very good, a guy who could do short stuff and go long and catch underneath stuff and run away from people, who can outmuscle you, just so on. Kevin White just seems like a guy that they would just absolutely love to have. I know that's like an unfair thing because he's so good, but people forget, like, his 1 year was special. His first year was not that. But that build, a guy who could play outside, they could move him inside because don't forget Graham Harrell had Drake London inside. There's some ways to use him. I think that would just be too much fun to resist. And Could he be a guy that catches 100 passes and 12 touchdowns? Yeah, I think so, because he did that before. And I still just don't see that alpha in this offense, a guy who scares you and who opens things up. And no matter where you put him, he's got an antidote for your defense and your coverage. And could be a slant that he runs away from people. Could be a go route where he just runs away from people. But every throw he can catch and every catch he can make. I miss watching him play. I wish he'd clicked in the NFL like I thought he would, but I think that he would be the one thing that this offense seems to be missing. That hook him up with a good quarterback again and watch out. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean that's the pick. I think he was, again, there were three guys. It was really came down to two. Third, by the way, I'll just go ahead and say it, was that right tackle spot. And I think, again, you can shore that up, then that helps your quarterback. You help your quarterback, that helps your run game, it helps your pass game, all that stuff, kind of a domino effect. So I considered that, but really it came down to quarterback. As I said, Will Grier just removing all doubt, and then that you feel good about everyone else, and that just gets plays made for these other wide receivers. Again, they haven't really made the plays, but have they had the quarterback that could get it done? And I'm not sure they have. But I had a real hard time not picking Kevin White. As you noted, like, when's the last time West Virginia just had a game breaker, a guy that's going to catch it 2 yards from line of scrimmage and score a touchdown, a guy that's going to do it kind of on his own? And not only that, but he kind of fits perfectly with what West Virginia has, because 96% of his snaps were wide right, like the receiver on the right side of the offense, which means Bryce Ford Wheaton's on your left side of the offense out wide. And then in the slot, you can get interesting. But as you noted, he could also play slot. He did have a handful of snaps at slot. In the bowl game, it was almost like 60-40, or like 60, 2-1 kind of outside inside. But he played more slot than he had previously. So he is capable of it. He can do it. If you want to put him there, keep Prather outside, whatever you want to do. But you tell me you got a wide receiving core of BFW, Kevin White, and Caden Prather with Sam James and Reese Smith kind of backing up, and these other guys are bringing in. That's one of the best in the Big 12 right there. That's one of the best wide receiver groups in the Big 12, and that can make your quarterback look a lot better. So, again, my choice came down to Kevin White or Will Grier. So I don't think you can go wrong either way.
Who's your right tackle pick? It's McKivitz, right?
Yeah, I went McKivitz, partly because, Yanni didn't really play. I mean, he was almost exclusively left tackle. I don't know how much that played into it, but you go back and look at the PFF grades, the scouting grades and stuff for those two. As good as Yanni was, Colton was better pass blocking every single year. Every single time. And, that's not the end all be all there, but I need to keep, if I'm going right tackle, I need to keep JT Daniels upright. I need to keep him upright, because that's, again, the injury issues are the issue. So I need to keep him on his feet. So pass blocking is paramount to me if I'm making that decision.
If you just want to have fun, go back and look at Kevin White's 2014 stats. And never mind, like 109, 14, 47, 10 touchdowns. But, like, he had 6 games with 10 or more catches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another with 9. 8 games to start the season with 100-plus yards. And then in the middle of that season, inexplicably, back-to-back games, 3 catches, 27 yards, 3 catches, 28 yards against Oklahoma State and TCU. They beat Oklahoma State pretty handily, I think, that year. Was it 34-10 year? Yeah, 34-10. And then got into that duel with TCU where I think that was the walk-off field goal year. They probably could have used him there, but, like, man, he was so good. He was just scary that year. And I'm more sad about that guy not making the NFL, because I think he was a freak who just got undone by injuries, and his personal story was so good that, boy, I'd love to see him get another chance. I think he would do it in this offense. But some options there. And again, to the point, there's not a lot of holes and like glaring weaknesses that can be fixed by accessing someone from the past year. And that's kind of what we're trying to explain, is that as we look at the start of the season here, camp starting on Monday, not a bad roster. Probably the best one the Browns had. Actually, not even probably. It's the best one he's had. But to the point, it's pretty thorough, pretty complete, and there's not a whole lot of, like, issue where you say, man, we got to fix that. And where they are in possession of question marks, it's not so bad that it's an obvious answer to. I think that teaches us something about this roster, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Less is more from Chris Anderson.
Yes, it is. I went too long on the quarterback thing, but by the way, I think I've done my usual both sidesing here. But to put it in, well, not in writing, but make it clear, I went Will Grier quarterback as my pick, with Kevin White at wide receiver, a very close second, Colton McKivitz right tackle at a kind of distant third.
I'm trying to think. You said that Grier's first year was 17, right?
Isn't that right? When it's 17 and 18?
Yep. Okay. I want to make sure I had that right too. Not that I was fact checking you, but I just want to be sure. All right. We will wrap this one up. We'll be back later on. A second episode. Same concept. Flipping the script, going to defense. You won't want to miss it. Until then, I'm Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We'll talk to you later.